So if you read Harry Potter and make you happy, would that mean it's from God?
No, it's outside of God, you know, I don't think those two things relate really.
So just because some books makes you happy,
Yeah.
it's not necessary that that something is actually indicative of being from God.
No, but I mean, you know, I search now.
But do you agree a book from God must be free from errors and mistakes and contradictions and inconsistencies?
I mean, I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, because God is all knowledgeable. We're talking about the wisdom of God. So He's not going to say something which is wrong, untrue, which is, you know, totally a mistake.
Yeah.
So you expect at least a book from God should be free from these kind of errors, mistakes, and contradictions. It doesn't mean a book that is free from contradictions is necessarily of God, like an iPhone book. But if a book claims it's from God, it must be free from those mistakes.
Right.
What else does the book have to have qualities-wise? Should it describe God perfectly? Or should it just say a book describes God like God is a little mouse, someone stepped on it and it got smashed and squashed and then it got eaten up by some birds flying to it, and that's it, that's the end of God. You'd say, that's not a perfect description of God. A book has to describe God, which makes sense to you, that is a perfect description of God. A book of God also should, for us, if we are not at the time of revelation that you're pointing to, it should be preserved to us, that we can be sure that the message within it is not adulterated, it's not corrupted, it's not changed or amended. Yeah?
What about, because I know there's two, not denominations, I think that's Christian, but two, not factions either, because it sounds like it's one, but there's Shia Muslims. And
Shias and the Sunnis are the same book. So it doesn't matter. So it doesn't.
They believe in one God, they believe in the Prophet, they pray, they give charity, they say lying is wrong, they believe one should do pilgrimage, one should give in charity.
Why is there two groups?
Political differences from the beginning. Politics is really sometimes can be very sad state of affairs. Political differences can make your allegiance to something very, what's it called, like fanatical to some groups.
And the thing, Morgan, is just because somebody is adhering to the map of God doesn't now mean that that person is going to be independent of existence and life and the trials of life. And the trials of life is exactly what we're doing here. Learning, making mistakes, you know, getting things wrong, getting hurt, you know, spreading happiness, spreading love, you know, telling stories and the likes. So,
but I feel like that should be, you know, intrinsic to every human. I don't think you should need to be told that at the same time.
I agree with you, and I wish that was the case.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, it's not.
There are certain things we need to be told because human beings are very arrogant certain times and not really down to earth. What I mean by this, for example,
Even, you know, lying.
I'll give you an example of something that is so mundane when it comes to health. All the places that you go to, hospital, workplace, restaurants, in the toilet area, you do your business, you just wipe and you come out with your dirty hands and you wash your hands and only. Where is the common sense to say you need to actually wash it and clean it?
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
Do we need to be told to wash? I mean, our Prophet Muhammad SAW actually said how to clean ourselves after you do your calling of nature. So, some things as mundane as this, in 21st century, people, when the thing happened with the coronavirus, what people were doing? They're stockpiling toilet paper, right? They didn't have any idea that actually, well, all you need is what we call a lota or a water pot, and you can wash yourselves and you can dry, of course, with people are panicking. This, even to the health systems, needs to be told. What you have in place is not really hygienic. More hygienic is if you have a system in which you have, you know, a shower head. You'll see some if you go to a Road on Marble Arch restaurants, you will see in the toilets there's like a shower head. It's not for a shower in the toilet, it's like to wash yourself when you've done your cleaning bits, right? So even this needs to be told. So religion is where God, through the scripture, tells us what is right for you to do, wrong for you to avoid, do's and don'ts, which is good for us.
See, that's the thing. I see, all these like religious texts. It's more sort of like fables, I mean,
Certain things have been introduced as fables.
yeah, that's the thing.
But that's in the religions that got corrupted. Islam tells you about, to give you Morgan, to give you one example where this approach about fables and vestigial organs and signs is really not really very sensible thing to discard of. In science, they used to come and say, you know what, this is a vestigial organ, that's a vestigial organ, byproduct of evolution and so on, because they can't think about the purpose. To prove evolution, they say, that's a vestigial organ, meaning it has no function and purpose. It's just a leftover. Only later to realize appendix has a function of stress control and various other things. So, junk DNA is another example. They call it junk because they didn't know what it does. Now we know how many things of junk DNA has a specific function. It has coding for a specific protein and so on. Likewise, when it comes to the other example, so the example I was talking about, this is science. What's the example I gave you about from religion? Just remind me, I lost the train of thought.
Talking about cleaning ourselves in the toilet.
No, this is about science, what they consider to be, fables. Fables. In the 1970s, they discovered, they meaning archaeologists, in Syria, a city called Tel Marduk or Ebla, and they found within these cuneiform tablets talking about different cities that people did business with. One of the cities was called Iram. Other was like Thamud. But within the historical record of Arabia, or within this area, everyone forgot there was a city called Iram. It was not in the historical record. So when non-Muslim translators of the Quran or critics of the Islamic religion, they said, look, the Prophet invented and fabricated and made all these fables about this city called Iram and so on and so forth. Because it doesn't even exist. What happened in the 70s? Now we have archaeological record, historical data saying that city existed. So because the Quran said, and you don't have a historical record, you can't just simply throw it out and saying it's fable. That was a clear demonstration, a shock to these individuals. And then it gave at the same time, how did the Prophet know a city that totally disappeared from human memory? How did he even know this? His people doesn't know. The Quran reminds them. Do you know about this city? About this city called Iram? And this is what they did and so on and so forth. Likewise, how the Quran talks about historical events of the past and corrects the historical misinformation that's been passed on by the Bible, for example. It corrects the Bible in certain instances in saying, no, during the time of Joseph, the Prophet, ﷺ, the monarch was not called a pharaoh. They didn't have the title pharaoh. They were just simply kings. Well, now, with our timeline and chronology of the historical record, we know within this time frame, there was no pharaohs. So, not only the Quran is correcting, not introducing fables.
Just to add to that, it was only 1,000 years later that the Rosetta Stone came, and that confirmed that indeed at the time of Joseph, there were no pharaohs. The dynasty were kings, and then it was introduced at the time
We
of Moses,
learned about hieroglyphics through the discovery of Rosetta Stone, because it's trilingual. 3 languages, and they could easily decipher it. Wow, someone was so clever to write it in 3 languages and make that hallmark in history that we can revive that language again. It might be difficult for us to say how they pronounce certain words. Okay, is it like, how you say something like this, Titimus or Atnachan, I'm just making things up, or is it something different? But the wordings is there, script is there, the text is there, we know, and we have deciphered a lot of hieroglyphics. So when the Quran talks about things of the past, just to say it's a fable, it's really far-fetched, because to say it's a fable, you have to establish that this thing didn't even exist in a historical record of any time, today, now, later, with all our technologies. Okay? The example I gave you, totally upturned. It's like Thomas Kuhn with the scientific revolution. The way he explained about science, it's like there's always like it upturns our understanding of science, a paradigm shift. So archaeologists, when they research the Quran, they know about the paradigm shift in the Quran. It totally changed their mentalities. Well, it should do. So certain other books may have fables, like how the earth is standing on a bull on his horn, and when it shakes, you get an earthquake. Well, Islam doesn't have to say anything like that at all. It says God created the heavens and the earth without any pillars that you can see. Meaning there are these invisible forces that hold them together. There are some very weak, false, fabricated narrations and so on, or very weak narrations, which comes from the Judeo-Christian sources, which they have accumulated, that talks about all the stories about the fish and the whale and so on. But they're not authentic. The authentic statements of the Prophet is recorded, and they're filtered through, and you will see that it makes sense when the Quran talks about. So when you look at the Quran talks about natural phenomena. So you expect a book not from God to make mistakes when it describes natural phenomena of that time, which is of a scientific nature.
Right.
Because at that time people were making mistakes describing natural phenomena. They thought the universe was static, for example. They thought the baby in the womb didn't undergo successive changes of its creation. It just became bigger and bigger. It was already a preformed human being, and it just became bigger and bigger. The Quran could have mentioned all of these things by taking the contemporary understanding of science and so on. But it rejects all of that, and it corrects it and gives you a different understanding. Today now we know, it's congruent with our understanding of science. So science, it seems to be coming with and in line with what the Quran says. Not Quran is in line with science, we have a different paradigm. We don't say the Quran is true because the science is saying these things. We say science is now on the correct understanding of reality because it's in line with the Quran.
See, that's the thing. I'm not knowledgeable on the Quran, as you can probably tell.
That's okay.
So all of this is just interesting to find out. I mean, my belief will still stand. I feel it. God is far too elaborate.
But you believe in a originator of the cosmos who is intelligent, has wisdom, has knowledge, possesses a lot of energy and power, has choice and intent, has created all of these things, who is a creator. You've already a believer in a...
I don't believe all of those things. My belief is subject to change,
So you don't accept any of that, what we just demonstrated?
I mean, I see your arguments, but I don't feel I'm knowledgeable enough to, argue back,
Fine, but you can see the soundness and validity of the argument.
Yeah, no, I can see, honestly,
You can look into it, no problem. You can research more, think and reflect more, but you can at least see the soundness and validity of what we are providing. If you want to then say, I'm going to commit to it, it requires some kind of conviction. And it requires some kind of hard will, where I'm saying, yes, I'm going to accept it. That is why Islam is one of submission and surrender. It's not something just voluntarily taking it, but submitting and surrendering to it, because it's so easy to surrender to these concepts. It's not easy to submit that there is a creator greater than you. People cannot accept that someone is greater than you like that. That's why most atheists are atheists, because they cannot accept someone is greater than them who created all this universe. It's the ego business that comes on. I'm not going to name you, but I'm going to tell you what it says. The universe. Whether God created it or not created, who knows? Can this be from God? This is the book of the Hindus, the Vedas. Talks about like this. The people who are inspired to write, the rishis, they're talking about this. It's all about philosophical speculation, that's all. So we know that surely cannot be from God, because God knows He created this universe. And the Quran talks about that. He is the creator of the universe. He's the one who's going to guide us. So when you are saying, sometimes I'm not, when you read the Quran is going to push you to reality, because that is what is giving you certainty of guidance, certainty of truth, certainty of reality.
So Quran isn't, because you mentioned fables, Quran isn't just a book that just talks about stories. Quran talks about actually historical facts. One such example that was mentioned verified by non-Muslim sources. For example, it talks about certain prophecies, and these prophecies they can be tested by other primary sources. For example, there was one incident which again is documented in history, and the chronology of Islam is there as well, even in non-Muslim sources. So again, it can be kind of fitted together. This was the battle between the Byzantines and the Persians. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, he, at a time that the Byzantines were losing. And not only were they losing, they'd lost their kind of main city, they lost Jerusalem, their leader, Heraclius, was being disgraced, and the plague had broken out. And it was at that time that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that between 6 and 9 years, the Byzantines, the ones that are losing, they're going to beat the Persians. So the Quran made that claim, and exactly within the time frame that the Quran predicted, it took place. And it was verified by, again, I've got all these cameras here, so if I'm saying something wrong again, I can be repeated online as well. It doesn't make sense for me to just make stuff up. So non-Muslim source, the Chronicles of Theophanes, again verified that historically he was not a Muslim. So in terms of prophecies, it's accurate. In terms of what the Prophet, peace be upon him, what was revealed to the Prophet via God, it's accurate. It can be tested. It's historically sound. And in terms of you're saying, okay, look, what can religion give to me? I would argue religion has a lot to offer. In fact, Islam came to preserve 5 things. Number 1, religion, monotheism, to kind of call us not to be pulled by various kind of deities in different directions, but towards one who just wants good for us. So because Islam is the only pure monotheistic religion. Others will have some sort of kind of addition. No, but it could be that God had a son, no, God is this or God is that. So monotheism, it came to preserve life. In the Quran it says to kill one person is like killing the whole of humanity because of the implications. It came to preserve intellect. Intellect how? By outlawing alcohol and drugs. Why? Because again, it clouds our intellect, and a lot of drunk driving, rapes, all of these things, they're linked to, a person.
I wouldn't say that, you can't claim that, alcohol means, say, murder or rape, for example.
Yes.
I mean, it's cause and effect. I mean, I would say, sure, there's cases where alcohol has been an assistant on the person, but that's not the alcohol that's caused that.
What is the safest limit of drinking alcohol, according to the consensus of the health organizations across the world today?
I don't really know.
According to WHO, according to all multiple international organizations, they came to a consensus. The safest limit of drinking alcohol is 0. None. Quran says simply, abstain from it.
But that's the thing, I enjoy it,
Yeah,
Sure,
people enjoy killing other people too, some people. It doesn't mean...
But I don't think those two can be related,
No, enjoyment.
So the point here is objective
Enjoyment.
morality.
That's the thing.
So let me just continue the point, which is that Islam came to preserve these things. How? Not for the individual, for the community, for everybody. So although you may actually be correct, maybe you can handle your drink, but the fact that somebody else can't, or somebody else doesn't know where his limits are, and then you've got the Lancet journal saying, you know what, no amount of alcohol is good, and you've got the best minds coming together, then surely, but that's not the center point. The point is anything that affects the intellect, anything that will affect your judgment. Now, you might think, you know what, I've drank below a certain limit. If you get pulled over by the police, that's it.
I don't drive.
No, but I'm just giving an example. But objectively speaking, in a country like the UK, that's it. You're going to be arrested. To preserve family. Like, it's well proven that adulterous relationships and the breakdown of family has not only a negative effect on the family, more crime, it then leaks over into the society. And Islam came to preserve the society and the family unit as well. That's why there is greater attention on family values and, you know, giving, or when you're in a relationship, to give respect to that person and for it to be done in a proper way, not in a way that any random individual can take somebody and then abuse them or do this or do that.
But I feel like, you know, as you said, talk about objectiveness. Surely that's, at the end of the day, I forgot what I was going to say.
But I gave you, I think I know where you're going.
It just depends on the person. I
Not
guess.
necessarily, because objectively, if you look at science, science tells us, and I mean, there's a saying, they say numbers don't lie. And with the statistics that they have, majority of the kids that come from broken homes end up being obese, drug abusers fall into depression and a bane for society. Even the couple that break up, they're more likely to commit crime. And heartbreak, one of the leading causes of even people taking their own life.
Little children, huh? Adults acting like children.
So when it comes to even adults and heartbreak, I'm sure you know from just watching movies and stuff like that, that entire movies and, you know, songs have been made on heartbreak.
Yeah.
Heartbreak. So heartbreak is enough. You know, there's actually a scientific thing called heartbreak, that your heart can actually be affected by trauma. And trauma, they say, is hereditary as well. So although you may say, you know what, I'm like this and I'm like that, I'm saying, okay, that's fair enough for what you want to do, but Islam didn't come for the individual, Islam came for everybody, to keep the whole community working in a harmonious way, that the need of the individual and the mother and the father and the farmer and, you know, the teacher, everybody's needs are objectively taken care of. So all of these points that I'm saying, although you may be able to find like, okay, you know, what if this or what if that, but you know in your heart of hearts, alcohol has been an issue for a very long time. The most you'll be able to say is amount, but like Mansur pointed out, the amount again is subjective. And even governments have had to put a cap. But even the scientific literature have said, you know what, like the Lancet journal, there is none. And then of course, wealth. Islam forbids interest. Why? No, but I'm making this money or that money. But interest makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. And that's, now if Islam came to just line the pockets of the Prophet, surely there'd be more things about, you know, enjoying life and having sex with women and amassing wealth and accumulating interest and doing this. But the Prophet, he wasn't a rich individual. He's somebody that, you know, forbade interest. He's somebody that when he was with women, he would enter using the marriage contract. His life was for everybody to see. He didn't take wealth from people. He didn't take bribes from people. And even when you look at Islam, if, let's just say, Morgan, you accepted Islam today, you would be making a declaration, which doesn't take that long. You would not need to pay anybody. You would not need to go to an imam at 4 o'clock, I'll book you for £30 or this or that. No, you accept Islam, you have your own connection with God. I would even argue, according to the Islamic faith, you have somewhat a connection with God even now. For example, if I was to hurt you as a believer, and you said, you know what, I'm going to pray to your God that you've wronged me, God would hear your call. Now, if this is something from man, why the heck are there things like this in there? You see, so it's things that go against the average human being that wants, for example, to win, to succeed, to amass money, to increase the enjoyment. For example, one of the founding fathers of liberalism is Jeremy Bentham, who says the two sovereign powers over you is pleasure and pain. So if you live your life by pleasure and pain, I mean, life will become a free-for-all. You know what I'm saying? Because if everybody just chases pleasure, I mean, life will become an upset. There will be crackheads everywhere, and everybody just going with whatever feels right. So this feeling right is not enough, Morgan, because even when you say pleasure, yeah, okay, but you would have to concede to live in a society. You will have to forego certain pleasures to live harmoniously. So you're like, okay, there's some sort of objectivity in the land that I'm in. But now the question arises, the government, what usul or what principles are they using to kind of decide the harm principle, which is probably what you were alluding to, yeah? How you live your life, not cause harm to somebody else and to maximize my happiness. That's what you were saying. So I'm saying the same thing, that, okay, then who defines to whom harm? So firstly, what is harm? Now you have a community, the LGBTQ community, they're trying to push forward a notion that to misgender somebody should constitute a crime. So again, according to them, they're saying that's harm, you're harming us. That's a harm principle. But somebody else would say, you curtailing our freedom of speech, that's harm. Do you see? So when left to our own devices, human beings, it will be a free-for-all. There was a study done by an individual from the University of Toronto. He done a study, and that's what I want to say about lying. He said children as young as 2, 50% of them lie. If you take it up to 4-year-old kids, up to 80% of them lie. So even lying, people say, no, we should be like this and we should be like that. That's all fair and good. Then why aren't we allowed? I'm telling you, Morgan, have you been to Pakistan? Yeah. So the traffic rules in Pakistan compared to the traffic rules here, big difference. Yeah.
Very big difference. We can break down there.
So if you are over there, zebra crossing, you just paint on the ground. It doesn't really mean anything. If you, as Morgan, I would advise you to go to Pakistan, please look both ways when crossing a zebra crossing. It doesn't mean anything over there.
Okay.
Yeah? So if you're saying, no, human beings should be intuited to be following the rules and caring about the other person, no. I mean, naturally, they're saying even a child is told that, look, they're left with a certain amount of sweets, and an experiment was done where they left the room and said, look, if, this is done, then you will do this. And then they left the room, they asked, the child actually lied to get ahead to win the game. The point that I'm trying to say is, left to our own devices, you're seeing what's happening. Can you play football without the rules? No.
Playing football from the start was very bad.
But you know the basics of football, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you see footballers, trying to fall over and trying to claim penalties. I mean, even though I like Ronaldo has been known to do that, and other players, you try to get the most, especially in the World Cup, where the nation's eyes are on you. Of course you're going to cheat. To say, no, the person should be a good person, that's all well and good. But why would you be a good person? Like Mansur's example, like when you're in the toilet by yourself. I mean, naturally, if you get fecal matter on your hand, you'll want to wash it off. On your leg, you'll want to wash it off. Why not when you go to the toilet? Why does that washing, not work over there? Why is tissue enough? Not enough. So the thing is, when we're by ourselves, why do you think we've got cameras in bus lanes? Because it doesn't make sense. We can't be left to our own devices. So Morgan, the point that I'm trying to say is, Islam, you're saying how will Islam or religion benefit me? I'm saying Islam is benefiting you with objective morality. Because a Muslim, and you will see this yourself, hopefully a Muslim that's practicing, you will see them in certain scenarios and situations, and there's no camera or anything. If something and you need help, you can count on them and they will help you. Yeah, why? And they're not doing it because they're going to gain something from you. Because the reason why a Muslim does something is for the pleasure of God. That's the sole reason that we do something. And that's something above ourselves. If somebody is doing something for somebody that they can't see, rest assured they will follow and do something with the people that they do see. That's why divorce, if you look objectively, in Muslim majority countries, rape, less. Murder, less. Gambling, less. Alcohol abuse, less. Stealing, less. In fact, there's social experiments that are done on YouTube where a guy will just leave the keys on his Lamborghini in Dubai, go in, come out, and it's still there. Why? Because the punishment is there, and again, it's coming from religious principles. So it's not, what can religion do for me? It's, what is religion doing for you? Even without you knowing it, that you can call out to God, you will accept, and you will hear what you're saying, and even society, you will, if you go, like Gabrielle, there's the traveler, she's a solo traveler. And one of her reasons for accepting Islam was when I went to Muslim countries and my motorcycle broke down. Men would be there. And the way they treated me as opposed to people in, say, Western countries, this is enough to show me that it works. And Morgan, that's what I will say. Islam works. It's all well and good saying, yeah, but look, when it comes to happiness and stuff like that, it's a multiplier. If let's just say you want happiness and you're feeling a bit happy, Islam will tell you, don't settle for less when it comes to happiness. You're confusing happiness with lust, with joy, with contentment. That's not good enough. That's to do with receiving. You could have an iPhone, you feel happy for a couple of weeks. All right, fine. But that's not happiness. Apple will tell you that is happiness, because then as it goes down, the next year, another model comes out, or buy another one. So capitalism, materialism, that won't tell you, oh, you know what? No. You search for something beyond yourself. Coca-Cola will tell you, drink our bottle. Look, there's a happy family. Why? Because they know you have a yearning for family, for community. I mean, even Harlow monkeys, they did an experiment, and there was a baby monkey, and there were two kind of models of a mother. One was very kind of prickly, but it had milk. The other one was soft. So the child, or the small monkey, went to the soft monkey to show that we need love, we need compassion, and materialism is just not enough for us. And you're not going to hear that from the corporations, because they make money from telling women that they're ugly, so they go and buy makeup. They make money of telling you that your car is no longer acceptable societally, that's why you need to upgrade. Look at these women that will come to you and stuff like that. It's inherently materialistic, whilst religion tells you the exact opposite. And Morgan, I'm sure you'll accept, a person that can't be bribed is a force to be reckoned with. And that's a person that controls his stomach is a force to be reckoned with. Otherwise, look at the people that get bribed because of food or a dollar and a dime. People that are, selling their families and just for the throne. We know these old stories of people killing their own father. But in Islam, we're told fast. There's an obligatory month that we're fasting from dawn to dusk. Control this. You're better than this. Don't just rely on food. Yes, you can eat at the end of the day, but realize that you are not defined by the food in your body. You're not defined by the clothes that you wear. That's why when we do the pilgrimage, the king, the pauper, the guy working at the bank, the guy that's a plumber, the regular guy off the street, everybody, every male, white cloth on top, white cloth at the bottom, and we all look similar. Even as you're leaving the park, you're leaving from there, you might see some Muslims praying. It's just one row. It doesn't matter who you are, we stand shoulder to shoulder and we pray together, again, regardless of your social class, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of any of these things that society tells us makes you more of an important person. Because God tells us it's not your color, it's not your knowledge. Like, you're honest actually, saying, look, I don't know this, I don't know that. That doesn't matter. What matters is your deeds, sincerity, and you coming here, listening. That Islamically, we hold to a very high regard and a high esteem. And I would actually say that if you continue this sincere search, not you might or you may, I will tell you, if it's written for you, 100% sincerity is the ingredient that's required. Otherwise, anybody can accept. But like Mansur said at the start of the conversation, it's the culture, it's the politics. That's the thing that divides people, because there is more that unites us than divides us. But like Lord Crewe, when they were looking at the Middle East, Lord Crewe, it's in a book called Secret Affairs by Mark Curtis, he said it's within our national interest to keep the Middle East divided so they don't become a principality that has control over oil, because we need the oil. Yeah, so again, political interests. Mohammad Mossadegh, who was a democratically elected leader of Iran, 1951, he was removed actually. He was quite secular, but he was removed. Why? Because he tried to nationalize BP. And because of that, after him came the Shah, and the Shah was a dictator. And ever since then, the Iranians have been pissed. They've been pissed. Palestine, if you look at Muslims, we've had no issues with the Jewish community. And there has been no issues. Karen Armstrong says in her book, she's not a Muslim by the way, and she said the Muslims actually had no issues with the Jewish community. However, after Palestine and the Balfour Declaration, where Britain had control of Palestine and it gifted it, it gave it for it to become Israel and to the Jews, that's when a rift came between the Muslims and we say the Zionists, not even the Jews. So when you look, there's a very good book by Karen Armstrong, Fields of Blood. She argues that a lot of these things that are actually said about religion, no, it's religion that causes it. No, there's an underlying factor, underlying common denominator, and that's politics. That's politics. And that's the thing that can turn a civilized man into a dog. As we're seeing today, people that come with very sincere reasons of becoming political leaders, but then they end up doing all sorts of madness. Power corrupts, money corrupts, and all of these sorts of things. And the only thing that can help you in that moment of time is somebody that can, it's like they say, bully the bully. Like even if you look at the system around us, you've got the police, but who's policing the police? Hitler died, he's doing all of the, he done some madness, but he just died. A lot of people are pissed. So there needs to be something objective. Like I proved to you, rationally it makes sense. You said, okay, what does religion have to offer? Let's say it offers you a peace of mind, offers you justice. We have a higher threshold for pain. Daily Mail, who tends to have anti-Islamic headlines, they said Muslims in 2016 were the most happiest. And again, you look at these, non-Muslim sources. The reason I'm giving you these non-Muslim sources is not so it's circular reasoning or it's proved by the Quran and so on and so forth. You can see this stuff yourself. And you will see this, inshallah, God willing. I mean, the fact that you're here, you've given us your time, I'm very grateful for that. The fact that you asked these fantastic questions, and we did go back.
I wouldn't say they're fantastic, no.
I thought they were good. Shall I tell you why? Because they were your questions. And they're fantastic because you didn't just get off a website. It's fantastic because they were your questions, it came from you, and they seemed honest enough to me, frankly. And that's the reason. But I think it's a better question than something somebody just got off Google from an anti-Islamic website. You see, that's why I think just continue doing more of that. And one simple exercise I would say, and you don't need us to do this. When you're at home, when you're by yourself, I'm telling you, if you reach out to God and you're sincere, there's no way God will not answer you or reach back at you. So if you just raise your hand in whatever way say, oh God, I spent some time speaking to Muslims. They claim that they have the truth. What they said sounded, fantastic, amazing, especially the guy with the blazer. He was very handsome, he spoke a lot of sense. You know what I mean? You can add that. You don't have to add that.
It'll be in there.
Yeah. So then you say, you know what? So I was sincere. I just want to be guided. I don't know what I need, or life is complex and this and that. They made things simple, and I don't know. Say that to him. And I'm telling you, you don't need to come back to me. It's between you and God.
There's a statement of the Prophet ﷺ on this man, where he says, look, if you come to God like a handspan, He will come to you like an arm span. If you come one arm span, He comes to you 2 arm span. If you go to Him walking, He comes to you running. Metaphorically telling you, if you take that step, 1 step, He takes 10 steps. Because that's how God wants to connect with His creation. Not leaving them in total misery and confusion and doubt and so on, but rather give them the guidance and the light so that they can fulfill their obligation. Because the hereafter and the accountability is something that is certain. So He doesn't want people to go there and be in a bad consequence. So you can run after all your desires and all your, feeling of joy and happiness. I mean, some people do that to the extent where they take all these hard drugs. They go and rape women. They go and kill people because the thrill that gives them and make them happiness. Some people exploit all of that. But what we're saying is, look, the ultimate happiness is the happiness in the hereafter. This life of 130 or so years now maximum, compared to life of eternity, this life is nothing. Are we going to forego the eternal success and happiness just for a momentary, not even a fractions of millions of a second compared to eternity of this life, and ignore what's there outstanding. The ultimate abode is the hereafter. People forget that. People think they're living in a matrix and that's it. No, the real world, the real abode is the hereafter. And we should not be the loser of that by totally ignoring and rejecting and being arrogant and stubborn when truth comes to us. Seek the truth. When it comes to you, accept it. That's where you will be fulfilling and be passing your test. Because this life is a test. Our Creator knew our outcome. But still He has placed us here for a reason. So that you can test yourself whether you deserve to go to heaven or not. Because He could have put straight you into heaven, me into hellfire. You would not complain. You'd be happy. But I would say, what have I done? Why did you put him into hellfire? I would have questions, and I said, God, you're just. Why did you put me in hellfire when I have not done anything? But if God said, look, I knew you were going to be arrogant and stubborn and reject the truth, so I spared all of that. I put you directly into hellfire. Why do I have to create this world and create you and go through for 60, 70, whatever years that I gave you life for? I spared all of that. Then I'll say, but I still haven't done anything. I don't remember doing anything, I haven't done anything. So this life is a test for us to understand and to prove to our own self, against our own self, whether we deserve to go to hellfire or heaven. So take that opportunity seriously. It's something oftentimes, we just leave because of I'm too busy with my studies and my work, looking for a girlfriend or a wife, whatever, making money. People try money, one thing, like people all the time in their mind, how do I make more money? How do I get richer, famous, and so on and so forth? People are preoccupied. Quran has a chapter on this. People are running. Alhaakumut takathur. Look how they are continuously going after all this more and more and more and more until hatta zurtumul maqabir, until they end up in their graves. Then they will know with certainty and so on. The Quran talks about it. That's what people are doing. Everyone is running towards competition to make more and so on and so forth. God is saying this will not stop until you reach your grave. But is it too late by then? Did you really fulfill the obligation? So it is very important, even though you're young and you think you've got so much ahead of you, we have no guarantee when we're going to die. Do I know when I'm going to die? I might fall dead the next minute. You might fall dead 10 years later or 5 years later or even tomorrow. No one knows. So because we don't know, we have to, when the truth comes to us, that's the time to accept it and surrender it. And God tells us, whoever dies in that state of accepting the truth, making that submission and surrender that there is no one worthy of worship except God, making that submission and declaration.
When did Allah become God?
That Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of God, you have become the recipient of God's grace and His mercy. And through His grace and mercy, you will go to paradise. So to receive that grace, he's just a heckler. To receive the grace of God, and to be recipient of it. To be recipient of it is to really make that declaration. Not only simply saying, I will think about it later. Act now.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure speaking to you, Morgan.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, you take care.
I'm looking for him.
Anyway, take care.
I'm looking